Greetings, this is George here, and we are recording this on another Friday the 13th. If you check out my Panic in Year Zero video, I had recorded that on Friday the 13th a few months back, and now here we are December of 2019, and it's Friday the 13th, and we are recording another video, and I'm very excited about that. And the video I chose, the film that we're talking about today, I think fits in with the Friday the 13th motif. And the film is one of the best in sci-fi history, Forbidden Planet from 1956. This one was directed by Fred M. Wilcox. It starred Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, and Leslie Nielsen. So let's dive into this bad boy. So the plot is pretty cool. It's about the crew of the starship C-57D that are sent to the planet Altair 4 to check out a colony that hasn't been heard from in like 20 years. And when they arrive, they find only one survivor of the original group, a Dr. Morbius. And he's there with his own daughter, Alteria. Now, according to Morbius, the rest of the colonists had died of a plague shortly after arriving. But rather than accepting this explanation, the commander of the C-57D, Commander Adams, decides to investigate further. And eventually he unravels the plot, which involves an ancient alien race called the Krell. And they have a deadly power that Morbius is desperate to keep hidden. And that is the plot of the film. And if that doesn't pique your interest, then I'm not sure what to tell you, because to me that is right on the money, cool stuff. So why did we decide to pick this film? Why did I choose it? Well, for one thing, it is one, like I said before, of the most interesting science fiction films of the era. It's got a lot of cool things to say, a lot of great ideas, and a lot of originality. Now, another thing about it is it had a large budget. And that was rare at the time. See, prior to Forbidden Planet, most Hollywood studios did not put a lot of movie money into their science fiction films. They considered it a juvenile genre, they considered it a schlock genre, and they just didn't invest a lot of money into that genre at the time. But Forbidden Planet came along and they thought, you know, let's try something different here. Let's actually put some resources into this. Let's put some money into sets. Let's do some animation. Let's really jazz this guy up and see what happens. And it worked. It was a big hit. And it proved to the studios that there was money to be made in science fiction if they were willing to invest in it. And so it led to a thought process of let's put more money into these films. And that helped pave the way for movies that came later in the genre that had bigger budgets. And it gave us the beginning of that, and I really appreciate the film for that. So what I'd like to do now is talk about a few highlights. I have them listed here on the clipboard of creeps. I apologize, it just helps me to have a little some notation to go off of. So I'm going to use a clipboard of creeps. But we got some really neat highlights here that I want to bring up. So the first one is, to me, is Robbie the Robot. This was the debut of Robbie the Robot, and I think he's cool. If you've seen some of my other videos, you could probably glean the idea that I like robots. I'm kind of fascinated with them. So Robbie has this unique look, very iconic, and I'm sure to us today it probably looks a little silly, but perhaps in 1956 this looked cutting edge. But if you watch the film, it's definitely a guy in a suit, and he's moving around, you know, the robot, classic clunkiness, but it just works for me. It works. I like Robbie. Alright, another thing is the connection to Star Trek. There are many parallels in this film to the television show Star Trek. And Gene Roddenberry has made it clear that he was influenced by this film. And it's very obvious if you watch this movie. It almost feels like you're watching a precursor to Star Trek. You got a crew, and they're in uniform, and there's a captain who is very large and in charge, and you have a spaceship, and it goes out to a distant planet, and it lands on the planet, and it finds weird stuff, and there's some weird conspiracy going on. And the captain and his crew have to figure out a way to deal with it and save the day. When Roddenberry was doing Star Trek, I have to believe, and he even said it in some interviews, that this was very much a basis for that. And for that reason alone, I really appreciate this film. Another connection I'd like to bring up is the connection to the Twilight Zone. Interesting thing, If you watch The Twilight Zone, there's several episodes where you see a flying saucer in the episode. One that comes to mind is The Invaders. Check that episode out, it's awesome. But in that episode, there is a flying saucer model in it. That is the same flying saucer used for the ship in Forbidden Planet. So whenever you see a flying saucer in The Twilight Zone, it's the same one that was in this movie, which is awesome. But then there were also some cast. Earl Holliman, who plays the cook in Forbidden Planet, and it's kind of a comic relief role. He was in the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone, Where Is Everybody Gone? Another amazing Twilight Zone episode. And then Anne Francis, who plays Altera, she was in a pretty cool episode. She's actually in 2 episodes, but she was in one that was really neat about like a mannequins in a department store. I can't remember the title of that one, but I do remember enjoying that. So, Twilight Zone, Star Trek, those things came after this film. And I gotta think that this movie helped influence both those, and I love that. Alright, and one other quick thing that I gotta note as far as something I appreciate about this movie, and that is Leslie Nielsen. Captain Adams, played by the legendary Leslie Nielsen, who, as we all know, would go on to do a string of slapstick comedies, most notably Airplane and the Naked Gun films. And he was the star, the strapping young captain, the Captain Kirk type character in this movie. And it's interesting to me to see him progress from what he did here to what he did brilliantly in those comedy films. So Leslie Nielsen, hats off to you. You did a great job as Captain Adams in this film. So that brings me to my final thoughts. And to me, what really brings this film home is just the fact that it has a really compelling story and compelling characters. So we think about the idea of Dr. Morbius, and we're led to believe at the beginning that he is a victim, that he came out to this planet, that a lot of his friends and family died, he was left all alone with his daughter to raise, and he built this great pseudo-civilization for himself. And we're beginning to think that, he's an okay guy, but as the captain starts to peel back the layers of that and find things underneath, then things get interesting. And we start to feel that shift of, okay, maybe Morbius has something going on that doesn't meet the eye here. And when the reveal of that comes, it's amazing. It's very good thought out sci-fi. The idea that there was this ancient civilization and they had technology beyond our imagination, and the people that came, they found that and they corrupted it in a way that is just, you don't see that very often. It's something cerebral, and it's not based on visuals. It's based on just an interesting sci-fi idea. And I think that's what really makes the film shine. Plus the production values and the fact that it just has connections to all these other great pieces of media make it, in my opinion, one of the best films that you can check out from the 1950s in the sci-fi genre. So that's it for this week, Forbidden Planet. Friday the 13th we're recording this, so that's always fun for me. And I'm sure I will do it again when we get some more Friday the 13ths in the future. But we'll be doing some more videos in 2020. This is the last one for 2019, but we'll do some more in 2020. Might change the format up a little bit. I've been thinking about that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go down that road. But until then, I will see you later, and have a good one.